thank the grace of heaven and the virtue of our predecessors and senior transmitters and transmitters that I have this opportunity to present this class. This is the class that I'm going to be presenting is just the translation of the scripture by the Buddha of the Three Realms. That's the one we did the sand writing. So you all saw the sand writing, right? Yeah, you did? Okay.
Just print one out first.
Oh, you didn't print?
I didn't print.
Ask you to print. No, okay.
Didn't I print? You didn't get it?
I didn't get it.
Oh, I did.
Did you print?
Well, let me print it again because I changed the font and some of the stuff. So.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Let me just print it. Okay.
Okay, yeah, this is the sand writing. Originally, I thought I was supposed to also. I thought correctly that I was supposed to do the Holy Teacher Scriptures on the second day, which was the 老母的交代 or the whole the instructions from our God, from God. Okay, and but I wasn't so sure. I knew that it was segmented because we're supposed to only have a segment, and then Ohio had to have another segment, and Iowa, etc. down the line. And I wasn't quite sure where it ended or beginning or how it was going to be segmented. So I thought, okay, wait until I get the whole thing, then I'll figure it out. But so I was told today that it's supposed to be just one segment. So it could be independent. So we'll probably have to do that next week. Okay. So sorry about that. Because I know there's two classes, and the first class is this one, and the second class should be about the other one. But we're going to drag this class into two classes. Okay, so like for those who saw the sand writing for the first time, any thoughts on that? Just curious. Any thoughts on seeing the sand writing for the first time?
Who saw it for the first time?
I know Sally, Serena, Nick, and James. Yeah, it's different. Yeah. I mean,
almost unbelievable.
Yeah.
Humans cannot do it.
Yeah, you would think that it's not.
Writing sideways
Yeah, as you know,
with the eyes closed.
with their eyes closed. Yeah, you know how it's written and all that now, right? It is sideways. It's like writing, like me writing using a pen, and writing like this. Like that. Yeah, it is like that. It is like that for the person standing here reading it. But just be fair though. The Tao, in this Tao, we are not the only people who can do that. Okay. There are certain Taoist, which is not Tao, but Taoist groups that also have what we call sand writing. It's a little bit different in the sense that the one I saw on I think it was on TV. I saw it once. They use a stylus that's much larger and is held by two people. Okay, so one still they stand the same way, and the person again is writing, and the other person, instead of just holding that big eraser, so to speak, that rake eraser, he also holds a part of the stylus. Okay, because the stylus is just a big chunk of wood or something like that, a root of a tree or something like that, or a branch. And they do also perform sand writing.
You seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it. Okay, on TV.
Oh.
On TV. I've not personally seen it. This was, I don't know where it was filmed or documented, but I believe it may have been Taiwan. Okay, so so I've seen also a sand writing by other groups of the Tao. Okay, and they do it the similar way we do it. Okay, and usually a quick note on the talents who are doing it is that our group's talents are trained. I guess each group's talent is trained differently because there are other groups who train their talents differently to become like talents. For some of in our group, for some of them, they are like from when they're very young until they become adults, they were all talents. They train as a talent very young, maybe like around, I don't know, 10, around 10 even, age of 10. Yes.
Would you know how they are trained?
I have some idea of how they are trained. I've never seen it myself, but really, it's kind of, I don't know. I guess you could say very simple. Usually, when they train, they have a transmitter present, okay, and the talents. It could be more than one group. One group. Each group has 3, okay, and they just all stand next to their sandboxes, so to speak. And the third person, of course, doesn't have to stand there because they do the recording. Okay, and essentially, let's see. I think so. Like they just like compose themselves, and then if they're selected, if you will, the Buddhists will then begin to use them. Okay. Now, those that succeed to become full talents, essentially, the Buddhists will constantly use them. Okay, and those who do not succeed or gets, I guess you could say, gets, how do you say this? Gets rejected, if you will. They don't succeed in being able to channel. Okay. Now, prior to them actually doing the sand writing, my understanding is that, and I don't know if this part is accurate or not, is the fact that they do learn about some aspects of like sitting very still and calm, okay, in Jingzuo, okay, but it's, my understanding is not like meditation, okay. Again, it's what like the Buddha Nature class lecture Liu talks about, that type of meditation, Jingzuo, okay. Part of their besides learning, just being channeling, the talents also have to do study. They study essentially, mostly I wouldn't say essentially all, but mostly books on the 4 books. Okay, Confucian 4 books. Okay, they study that, and they may read also past sutras or scriptures and all that stuff, or learn from that. Okay, the reason for that is because of the fact that they must have this knowledge of these words that's used in the 4 books and all that stuff. Okay, only because of the fact that if they don't have that knowledge, okay, the Buddhists will not be able to compose. Okay, now that sounds kind of weird because we say, hey, wait a minute, Buddhists are channeling, right? So Buddhists knows, it's omnipotent. They know everything. So how is it that they cannot compose, just because the talent is unable to do so, does not have the knowledge of those words or whatever? And it is because of the fact that, first of all, when Buddhists channel, the body, let's put it this way, it is the Buddha nature, if you will, that channels, that sort of like, how do you say, manifests itself, okay? Because improper channeling, according to our group, I think, is the fact that the talent literally, I'm not quite sure whether this applies to sand writing, but I think it does. Essentially, they're, what do you say, the person who's actually doing the writing, their spirit is sort of like taken away or taken over, if you will, by the Buddha. Okay, but the problem is that the Buddha, the part that takes over is just the Buddha nature. It's just the Buddha nature of the Buddha, okay, if you will, okay? And so therefore, it still has to filter through our human capacity, or human ability, or human nature, if you will.
Well,
Yes.
No, actually, I think the sand writing, it doesn't matter. It doesn't,
because they're just controlling the hands.
Yeah, but
It's not going through the
well,
mind at all.
yeah, but there is some manifestation because I talked to Sansai. I heard even the recording. Okay, because
the person announcing has to know the words, but the person who's writing does not necessarily.
oh no, yeah. There's two parts. The two parts,
Yeah, so
right.
That's what I'm saying. So that they don't necessarily need to know.
Yeah,
this stuff.
the-
They can write like foreign languages.
Correct.
so
That's
they
correct.
have no idea.
That's
So
correct.
that's
Yeah.
only the channeling where they're speaking through them.
That's
they
different.
have to
That's
know.
different. Yeah.
Then it has to be part of their
Right.
knowledge.
Right. So yeah, to sort of like put more in detail, yes. The person doing the composing and the person doing the writing, I mean the announcing of the words as well as the recording of the words are a little bit different, okay? Because after all, the control is still by the human hand that's controlling the stylus. So in that sense, yes, the Buddha is taking over that person to control the hand, okay, of what's written. Now, my understanding from the talents, or from I heard from about the talents, is the fact that even when they're writing or recording, I mean announcing the words, sometimes, for them it's like they are, I don't know how you want to call it, semi-channeling. I'll call it semi-channeling for the sake of argument, because they're awake as humans, they can see it, but to them they even say they are surprised that they're able to read, like the person who's announcing the words, to be able to read the words very well, very very quickly, very clearly. There are sometimes some of the words, I admit, if you watch them long enough, like you can recognize some of the words that's being written. Just a normal person, you can see it, but you see the speed of how it's written, right? And it's also the words are written very what we say cursive, right? Very very cursive, very cursive. I mean, even for Chinese, it's like extreme cursive. Okay, because I don't know if you've seen some of these scriptures or sutras, when there's a scripture within a scripture. Have you seen those? You see like a line. Oh, that represents a word, really? yeah, it's very abstract. It's like just a script. Because it's like it could be just a quick curve and that's it. You have no idea what it is. A normal person would have no idea what that is. Okay, but anyway, so sometimes the sand writing, it can be like that, because let's face it, Chinese takes time to write, and so the Buddhists have a way of saying, oh, okay, let's do it shorthand. So they do it that way. Okay, and so therefore, even the talents themselves, sometimes the person who's announcing I heard this from someone saying that, wow, they were surprised they were able to recognize the words, and follow it. Because normally, even, definitely a normal person would have no idea what's written down, okay? Even if you're very versed in the handwriting. So in that sense, I say it's a little bit like semi-channeling. Their ability to recognize that word really quickly. So that's why, even though it's not full channeling, because they're still awake and they can, see that, but I call it semi-channeling, okay? And then the same thing with the recording person, because as you know in Chinese, especially when you saw when the actual channeling occurs, that when a Buddha or saint is composing, right, and we're writing these words down on the backboard, they go, oh no, that's wrong. Okay, you see all those tags, mistakes. Okay, so same idea, because the person who's recording is just listening, nothing more. She doesn't see the words in the sandbox. So she's just hearing what's coming in. And so therefore, she has to know the context of how to write it. It's very much like how we write it when, on the blackboard when the Saint and Buddha's composing, right? And you see how many mistakes we make. Okay, right? So yet, even for her, she's a little bit, quote unquote, semi-channeling. For the ability to be able to understand what's written down. That's why even though they look like they're not channeling, but in a way they are, a little bit. Okay, or what I call semi-channeling. Okay, because according to the two talents, the talents that when they're explaining it, they say sometimes they're surprised that they're able to know what the context is and all that that's being said.
I think they're 3 in 1.
Yeah, well, the three of them are together, but I'm saying, one person doesn't do anything but just write. Yeah, but I'm saying the person who's announcing the words and the person who's listening and recording the words, those two are what I call semi-channeling, like, because they themselves have admitted that, hey, I'm surprised that I can, I know that word, when it's written down very quickly, and also the context. But of course, even Buddhists, you notice sometimes the Buddhists would what? Pause, dot, 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 right?
Circles, right?
Yeah, and they would do circle. Sometimes just do a circle.
They also
Okay.
make corrections.
Yeah, exactly, right. Okay, and those corrections, sometimes, okay, I've seen both. Some are corrections to their own composition. They want to change the wording, the word that's written down, for example. And some are actually just correct what the recorder sometimes have recorded or announced, or the announcer who announced it. Because, as you know, Chinese unfortunately has many words that sound the same. So, but Buddhists know when sometimes even the recorder may have made a mistake, and again a correction will be done. Okay, now you notice the speed of this, right? I've seen it. I have actually personally seen it when some talents were training. Okay, to start sand writing, and it's written very slowly. It's much slower. Starts out slower and then picks up speed afterward. Once they become more, I don't know, in tune with the Buddhas. Okay, but it starts out slow. Okay, now also Buddhas can write it slowly. I've seen a case where Buddha would write it very slowly and not as cursive. Not as cursive. Okay, again, it's to all these are ways that they train, I guess I'll call it, train the talents, okay, especially when the talents are new, okay. So I've seen that where, it's written slowly and it's not cursive at all, almost not cursive at all. It's like a normal traditional font, right, written in traditional font. It's just because sometimes the talent, like I said, is not that knowledgeable in terms of words and all that, so she may not necessarily recognize the word. So, but I've seen that occur, okay? And also seen it occur where, when Buddhas come channel, right? Originally you want to start out as a sand writing, but then when it gets too slow, where the talent is really struggling, the Buddha would just stop and then channel, channel. What I mean by channel means, take over the person's body and channel, okay? It occurred once. I remember when we had these talents in the old temple, when we had Surong. Okay, it's one of the talents. She was training to be compatible with Xinhua, who was the talent. She was a bona fide talent, but Surong was learning to be a talent. And I saw one of their training sessions. I was there, and they were doing sand writing, and it was Guanyin or Nanhai Gufu, okay, came to train. And I saw, it starts out slowly and then the words are written very slowly. I saw it, I go, oh. and it's also not very cursive at all, okay. And then the Surong would try to read, she was doing the stick with the eraser, and she would try to read it. And she was having a difficult time reading it. Very difficult. And then after a few minutes, Guanyin Puza stopped, and then she just channeled Xinhua because it was just too slow. Okay, so but anyway, because she was just it was not really a training session. It was more like an actual sand writing, but she had been training for it. Let's put it that way. But she just couldn't get, wasn't at that level. Let's put it that way. So the Nahai actually just channeled. Okay, but from that experience and what I've heard, yeah, I assume that training is like that. Okay, but they do a lot of study. They read. They may not necessarily have to understand what they read, the 4 books, but the idea is to be able to read it and acquire that knowledge. So this way, Buddhists can make use of it. Okay, now that's mostly useful when we're talking about direct channeling, which is taking over the person's body. as Lecture Tai mentioned, in sand writing though, they do it in different. They can do it in different languages. Okay, because according to, as far as I know, I've only heard of one that a group of Chinese talents were doing regular training or something, and then all of a sudden one day they were able to somehow supposedly compose an English one that came out. Okay,
Well, yeah, Busan,
they have more.
well, I don't know, this is just one thing. Yeah.
It was Jesus Christ.
Came out in Greek.
Oh, Greek? Really? That I haven't heard.
It's like-
Yeah. Yeah.
They obviously didn't know Greek.
It's hard to
Yeah, it was Greek to us. It was Greek to them. So, so but anyway, the idea is the fact that because in sand writing itself, after all, it is just the Buddha or the saint taking over the motion of the stylus. So therefore, it does not require any knowledge. But of course, for the person who's trying to announce it and all that stuff, if that person doesn't know, then still, yes.
Just one quick question.
Sure.
Have you ever experienced any of the training being done by some of the senior talents? Would they train the junior talents? Or it's all done by the Buddhas?
Oh, okay. Well, as I mentioned, there is aspects of the training that's done by the Buddhas, the actual sand writing itself. Okay, but the idea of like learning to quote unquote sit calmly or whatever, that stuff usually we have the like previous or former talents sometimes help out the transmitter. Okay, and some transmitters were originally talents themselves. Okay, like Huang Dianansi now, Huang, the transmitter Huang, she was a former talent. Okay, in fact, our old predecessor, the grand predecessor, used to be a talent too, but he was the one that does recording. Okay, Lao Chenlen, our Lao Chenlen used to be a talent too. He was a talent before. So anyway, yeah, that's why in sand writing, you can have different languages or whatever composed. So in that sense, it gives you an idea that yeah, Buddhas and saints they are omnipotent, if you will. Okay, so they can do all these things, but it's just that, however, when you go into direct channeling, it's different. In the direct channeling case, they really need to use the instrument, which is the human body and the human brain, if you will, so that whatever they have, they can use. If they don't have it, they can't use it. So essentially, the body becomes like a tool for them to use. So if you got the knowledge, then fine, they can say it or whatever. But if you don't, because one of the first things I remember when I was in the Tao community about, listening to Tao, like, man, why can't they speak English? was my first, thought, because because at that time Chinese was very foreign to me. Okay, but also I've experienced certain cases where talents are unable to say what they want to say. And again, all this is due to the fact that it depends upon the knowledge base of the talent. So, in that sense, you could say there are limitations when you do direct channeling. Okay, but in writing, there isn't that limitation. But in writing, the limitation is the fact that you have to write those words out. So again, that's also a limitation, if you will. Whereas direct channeling is much faster. Whereas direct channeling, we can have what we call conversations. With the Buddhists, besides composing the sutra, they come around and talk to each one of us. With direct channeling, it's a little bit more difficult. Even though there are cases in direct channeling where sometimes, when the Buddha, after announcing, he doesn't really compose the scripture. He or she doesn't compose it. In fact, she would just ask, "Oh, do we have any questions?" And they'll write that out. And then each person would, can have questions or whatever. So in that sense, you could say it's almost like a conversation. But again, it's limited by the speed at which it can be responded, etc., because it has to be all written down. Okay. So, but anyway.
The sand writing can also be kind of a little bit conversational. It's not complete. I mean, it's like you can ask
Questions,
or
right.
just have a thought, and
Right.
they can answer it.
They can answer. Yeah, because the Buddha knows, what you're saying or thinking. Yeah, so yeah, in that sense, it's like, but again, it's limited by, the speed or how fast, how long the response can be. Okay, so anyway, so that is basically a background on sand writing. Okay,
There's also one other thing that you notice in sand writing, in the beginning, right, they start with they still, right, and then it start
circle,
spiraling out
right?
clockwise.
Yeah.
And at the end, they go counterclockwise, spiraling back into that dot. So you know what that means, right? You know.
Well, I mean, the beginning of the end.
Well, yeah, but where is that? That origin. They're coming from that origin.
Origin.
The Tao, the Tao, or the origin.
And we have to
whatever.
return
It's
to
coming
that.
from there,
Back to this.
and then coming down to this world, right? For us, but at the end they return back
Yeah.
to the origin.
Yeah, it's the same way when we do the. If you notice that the way they do the lamps, light the lamps, and also the way they fan out the lamps. The saying is that 一本善万书. Okay, so from a source comes everything, and then all source, everything returns back to the source. Yeah, so that's the idea. So if you notice the lamps, you light the center first, then you go to the right side and then the left side based on you looking at the lamp, and then when they fan it out, they reverse the process. Okay, so that's just to give you an idea of. Yeah. If you bow, the standing bow, you go out and then you come back. Yeah. It's all. Basically, that's the premise. From your source, you come out and then you return. I mean, it's the same idea of what Buddha in his first lecture. I mean, in the Diamond Sutra lecture, he presented. This is off track, I admit, but again, it follows that same principle, where the Buddha, before he begins the lecture, he doesn't say anything, and then he noticed, it's time for lunch. Well, somehow he knows. I mean, I don't know. Somehow he knew. Maybe by the position of the sun, he knew it was time for lunch. And by the way, when I say lunch, it means time for a meal, and all meals are done before noon. All meals are done before noon. Okay, and so therefore, he realized, it's not noon yet, so it's time to go out to eat. He goes out to the villages to, I guess, request alms or food. And he only does it to 7. I think it's 7. Yeah, he only does it to 7. No more, no less.
Is there a meaning behind
Yeah,
seven?
there's a meaning behind 7, and
What is the
I don't
meaning?
remember now.
Has to do, I think, with the 6 channel, plus 还有一个什么7窍 right?
Well, it's called 七拱八窍. It's supposed to be 八窍, number 8. But again, I remember there was, but again, I've forgotten about it. But the idea is that he comes back, eats his meal, and then washes his bowls, etc. When he's done eating, that is. Okay, and then he goes back and sits like what he was doing before he started all this. So the message is that from your Buddha nature, or not from your Buddha nature, but from your, I guess you could say, beginning, you are in constant stillness or whatever with your Buddha nature, and then you come into this world, okay, and then when you're done with whatever you have to do within this world or experience, whatever, you go back to your original state. Yes.
The meaning behind it,
The 7? Uh-huh.
is because our eyes is asking our eyes to come back to, not to go out everywhere, not to look at everything, but come back to the source.
Okay.
And the ears and the nose.
Right. So it adds up to 7. That's all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Yeah, but it will be only on the face, on the head. Yeah, not your whole body. Yeah, because you have 2 nostrils. That's the whole. That's the people. Yeah, people think, no, single nose, but it's actually 2 nostrils. It's the nostrils. That's
So in
why.
other words, don't let these 7.
Yeah, because these are your senses.
Yeah.
These are your senses.
Yeah.
Running wild.
Right. I mean, in Lecture Liu's class, he talks about actually the 5. This 5. Okay, and then plus one, but it's the 5. Because the nose counts and ears counts as one sensation. Well, hearing.
That's a scandal, right?
Yeah.
By scandal.
Yeah. So yeah. Right. Yeah. Yes. Scandus is called. Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Shut.
Huh?
Are you talking about?
No.
No.
It's just the 5 senses.
Five senses. Yeah, plus mine. Yeah, that's why I say 5 plus 1. Okay. So anyway, that's the idea. I mean, actually, it is the theme, if you will, of all teachings of Buddha teachings. That first you understand you have to understand first that you have a source, or you are part of the source. Let's put it that way. Okay. And having understood that, then you need to realize that you come from the source. Okay, because you have the source. You're part of the source, let's put it that way. Okay? And so therefore, by default, you what? You have to return to the source. By default, so to speak. Okay, so that's the whole idea. Again, knowing where you come from, and then even though you're now living in this world, so you may forget the fact that we come from, we have a source, and then when it is time for us to leave, and we have to know how to get back to the source. Let's put it that way. And so that's the whole idea of this Tao transmission, if you will, to reveal your true nature or your source, because the true nature is the source, if you will. Okay. So, anyway, having all that long introduction aside and explanation about the sand writing, let's go to our sutra here. The beginning just says it's the date right here. You see up here, it's just the date. Unfortunately, still more introduction. Okay, you notice that they use a method called has to do with earthly branch. What do you call that? What's the phrase for it? Yeah, heavenly stems and branches. Yeah, branches and stems. Tree stems and branches. Okay, no. That's what it is. Okay, that's why, and they do have like 12 of each or something like that, and it goes in what they call a 60-year cycle. Okay, 60-year cycle. Okay, so every 60 years it starts anew again. So why 60? I believe it has something to do with the way that the number of stems and all that and branches. Okay, and it may be related, and this part I'm not quite sure, the I Ching. Okay, related to not the I Ching itself, because the I Ching is actually the most recent development. Okay, the I Ching actually, the Book of Changes, the hexagrams. Okay, what we know of it today is not how it was before. It was very, very different. Okay, in fact, it was just a few dots or lines or whatever. Okay, very simple. And also, it doesn't have like 6 lines, or six groupings, I'll call it, 6 groupings of solid lines and dashed lines. Prior to that, in fact, it was 3, if I remember correctly. And then prior to that, even it was like some odd. Okay, but anyway, that's beyond the scope of this. But it may be related to that, so that's how they came up with the stems and branches. Okay, I don't know the origin of that, so. But they use the top up here when you see this part, the 五序. Okay, that's 序, no, 五序, 4th tone, and 序 is first tone, right? Okay, that has to do with a stem and a branch, I guess. Okay, stem and a branch. Okay, and then of course the second part here, which is the nongli, that means the lunar calendar. Okay, 2 means the beginning. 2 just means literally, I think, the first 10, right? They call it, there's no middle 10, unfortunately. I don't know why. Because a month has 30 days, the lunar calendar is 30 days. There's no 29 or 31. Okay, it's always no, actually there is a 29, if I recall correctly. Yeah, if I recall correctly. There's sometimes one. Yeah. And also the fact that they have double months. Double months. Leap month they call it. Yeah, leap month. I mean, that is so, I think it's crazy, but anyway. No, the way they do it, because sometimes you have 2 of the lunar months, twice.
Yeah, sometimes February.
Yeah, because it's actually, because it comes out to actually 13 months, if you will. It comes out to 13 lunar months. Lunar months, okay, whereas in the solar is 12, okay. And by the way, the lunar months, it's not as accurate as the solar, by the way. Just so that you know.
In what way?
Okay, well, first of all, the lunar is based on the revolution of the moon around the earth, right? And the moon is getting further and further away from the earth, and that's actually slowing down. And our days are also slowing down. It affects our rotation of the earth. That's a scientific
So
look
then
at viewpoint.
It will be prolonged. Then.
Yeah, because the lunar months. I mean, if we lived like 1 billion years ago, you know, the moon was moving around the Earth at a much faster rate and much closer too. So anyway, point is that over time, the lunar calendar will either get very longer, maybe a 14-month, or whatever, over time. Okay, I'm not saying, you know, within the next 100 years. I'm saying within the next maybe 1,000 years or whatever. But the lunar month will become, I don't know, longer. For the sake of argument, year will be longer. The lunar year, okay, because the moon it's actually moving away about 1 centimeter per year from the Earth. It's getting further away, and the further it is, the longer it takes to rotate around the Earth. Okay, and also because of gravitational effects, the Earth, tidal effects, gravitational tidal effects between the Earth and the Moon, the Earth begins to also spin slower.
Did you study that?
You read all this stuff in YouTube and all that. Okay, but anyway, that's just again a background on lunar. Okay, all right. Okay, and then finally 2, and then there's also you notice that in the incense, especially on the 15th, 1st and 15th, you have 2 Ya Zong. Okay, so Ya is actually the middle 10, I guess, for the sake of argument, and Zong is the last 10. So the grouping of 30 days is divided into 3 groups. 2 first 10, Ya second 10, Zong is third 10. Okay,
But that's only when you take time.
Yeah, and also only when you use it, because only 2 is used.
Yeah.
The Ya is almost never used, and neither is the Zong, because when you get to the 12, you just say 12. You don't say Ya 12, right? You just say 12. Okay, same thing with 25. You know, you say 25. You don't say Ya Zong 25. So I don't know. It's kind of messed up. I think the Chinese way of doing time. But anyway, yeah. Okay. So, another thing I want to add into about time is that what's very interesting, okay, is that in ancient times, you're talking about over 1,000 years. No, yeah, maybe 1,000 years ago, plus or minus, or maybe it could be more or less. The telling of time before the development with the sundial and the watch or whatever, okay, time is told in what's called periods. And in the past, the periods of time, because today we have 24 hours, in the past, there's only 12 periods of time, which is interesting, okay? And what's very interesting about this is the fact that this is cross-cultured, meaning the fact that in the Western culture and the Eastern culture, they use the same method, which is kind of interesting. Okay, in the sense that each period of time is equivalent to 2 hours. Okay, so in fact, like in the days of King Arthur or the feudalism in Europe, they tell time by, they call it the watch, first watch, second watch, right? They use that means first period, second period, for the sake of argument. Okay, and each period is 2 hours, equivalent to 2 hours of time, which is kind of interesting. And this occurs not only in Europe, but also in the civilizations of Europe, but also in the East, which is China, etc. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. In those days, they don't, you don't see that much travel, but yet they still are able to develop that uniform time, I don't know, telling, what time it is, etc. Okay, so but anyway, that's a little bit about the time. Okay, so we're finally finishing the first line. Gosh, actually no. Okay, here the last part of it just says, okay, sincerely request compassionate Buddha's instructions. Okay, that's all it's saying. Okay, so now we begin to start our first line of the scripture. Okay. Okay, the translation: the proper and correct course to Buddha's truth is through sincere, unselfish, and non-self conduct. Okay. Yeah, unselfish and non-self, you would think that it's about the same, talking about the same thing. This part, okay, first of all, this part of the composition is very much like an abstract. in today's papers. You know, does anybody know what an abstract is?
Synopsis?
Yeah, it's like a synopsis or a summary or conclusion, in fact, almost. Yeah, it's like almost like a conclusion, you know, even though in the paper at the back, at the bottom, at the very end, there is a conclusion. But anyway, so this part is really a synopsis of what the Buddha will say in following, you know, and then after he announces himself. So the proper course, okay. So here he's basically saying that unselfish, okay. Unself means that, yeah, it's not, you're willing to do it not only for yourself, selfish, yeah, right. Okay, yeah, not only to do it for yourself, but also here it says non-self, okay. Here non-self is talking about the fact that not only are you doing unselfishly, but you're also doing it without motivation. Okay, the idea of what we call, also in Taoism they have it, it's called wu wei, without intention, without intention. Arterial, yeah, without any motives, okay. So that's where the non-self means, okay. So not only you do it unselfishly, but you also do it with what? Without any concern of, if you will, rewards or whatever, okay. So that is the proper and correct course to the truth, okay. The second line then says, how to be in accord with this Buddha nature heart is through what? The letting go or release of injustice and inequality. Okay, here basically we're talking about the fact that letting go of injustice, letting go is, yeah, okay, maybe it's not a great translation here, but letting go is,
Technically, you can say if we are not, still have the injustice and the inequality, then how can we be in accord with our Buddha nature?
yeah, because okay, that's very good. Because in this dialectic world, in this world that we're living in, we will have what? Both, right? Justice, injustice, equality, and inequality. Okay, so the letting go of that is basically through, again, letting go is not a great translation, is to be able to harmonize with these situations. Let's put it that way. Okay, to be able to harmonize with these situations, because the fact that there exists these situations. Okay, and how is it, given the fact that you are awakened to your Buddha nature, how do you deal with each one? Let's put it that way. Okay, that's why Buddha talks about what they call tangsha, what is called tangsha. I guess if you translate directly, it's like at the moment, at the moment, at the moment. Okay, so therefore, and when they say at the moment, it's not like saying, okay, you thought about it for a few minutes and then at that moment you say something. No, that's not what that means. Okay, it's the fact that without even analyzing, examining, or whatever, it's almost like spontaneous. Okay, but it's not spontaneous as we understand it. Okay, but that spontaneity. Okay, excuse me. Okay, comes from our Buddha nature. Okay, our Buddha nature as opposed to our human nature. Okay, so anyway, any question? Was somebody want to raise their hand? I forgot.
Were we talking about Fang Yi?
Fang Yi.
Wandering mind.
Yeah.
You said the letting go is not a good translation.
Yeah.
We were talking about that.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, because Fang Yi is letting go. If you translate directly, it is letting go. Okay, but here really, because you.
No, this
Let
is
our wandering mind go wild.
yeah. I mean, this is saying all the things that are unjust or unrighteous, and also having you can say undisciplined, like unrestrained. It's unrestrained.
Because that's Wang Xing.
Unleading mind or deluded mind.
Yeah, the Wang Xing part is the uninstructed.
It's talking about all of that.
Yeah, right.
Like how can we be at one with in accord with the mind of
Yeah.
Buddha nature.
Yeah, so the idea is the fact that somehow you have to, I guess, discipline your mind, if you will. Okay, discipline whatever your temperament is and nature is, so that in order to be in accord with our Buddha nature, okay, you need to have that discipline so that you don't have the, if you will, like the wandering mind as mentioned by lecturer Tai here. Okay, so anyway, so if you look at these two lines, okay, so can anyone just tell me, what, just from these two lines, what really is the sort of like the theme here? The theme, what is the theme here?
So now, unselfish,
Well, yeah, okay, you got that.
egoistical, and also we have to practice equanimity. And
Equanimity,
also,
right.
righteousness, and also
That's outside. Yeah, that's outside. Okay.
also,
Yeah. Yeah, we'll just wrap it up after this, and then we'll continue on to the next, right? Okay. So basically, what we're talking about here is the fact that, okay, it talks about a proper course and a correct course to be able to reach our Buddha nature. Okay. Okay, Buddha nature, and then at the same time, once you have this realization of your Buddha nature, or to be incorporated, you need to be able to what? Manifest it so that you will be able to deal with any situation. Okay, so in a way, the theme is the fact that to realize your Buddha nature, okay, and hence to be accord with it, and utilize it in dealing with the present, if you will, for the lack of a better way. Okay, so that basically is like the theme here. Okay, so anyway, let's take a break now, and then we'll finish the remaining. I mean, actually, the remaining sort of like becomes a little bit easier once you understand the theme. Okay, so that can go more quickly. Okay, so anyway, any other questions before we break? Continuation of the sutra in New York, Sand Writing Sutra. So we finished the theme. Again, the theme is just to say that we need to realize that we have this Buddha nature, this truth, and that to be able to really be in accord with it, we need to make sure that our human characteristics are, if you will, tempered or disciplined, and that we also need to be unselfish as well as non-motivated. Okay, so anyway, so now the sand writing continues by now the Buddha himself announcing himself. So he says, I am, which is Unai, and then chief examiner of 3 realms. Okay, and then Feng here is the receiving or getting, if you will, God's decree. Upon entering the temple, I performed the arrival proprieties to Heavenly Mother. And then to every brother and sisters, be tranquil and at ease. And remain calm and wait for elder brother to speak. Okay, so all Buddhas and saints, when they come to a temple, they will always make their arrival proprieties. Okay, as well as departure proprieties when they leave. Okay, so that's why Chief Examiner himself does it. It's just that we don't see it, but they do it. And then he considers us, his brothers and sisters, only because he himself is it 8 or 7? I think it's 8, right?
Wow.
He was 8?
Well,
we
he
did
was.
it.
He was a son. He was a son of.
Yeah, Jigong Buddha in the Song Dynasty. Yeah, right. A Tang Dynasty or Song Dynasty? Tang Dynasty.
He was a king, right?
Yeah, right. Emperor. He was the first emperor.
He was a
Yeah, right.
son.
Yeah, he was the son. Okay. So anyway, he considers himself our brothers and sisters because, as we are disciples of the holy teacher, and he himself was, at that time, the son of a reincarnation of the holy teacher. Okay, let's put it that way. Okay, so therefore, because we are all disciples, if you will, of holy teacher, so that's why he considers us brothers and sisters. Okay, and also when he actually attained the Tao at that time in one of his incarnations, he was at a very young age. he's actually, like I mentioned, I thought he was 8, but I may be wrong on that part. Okay, so Buddhists sometimes do attain their enlightenment, if you will, at, you could say, can be at different stages in the human life. You know, it could be very young or it could be very old. Okay, we know, and we're able to tell sometimes who the Buddhas are when they do direct channeling by their posture or their speech, character, etc. How they conduct themselves. Some, you know, like you notice that in the for the uniforms that Buddhists wear. Well, I'll call it uniforms, but the attire that they wear once they channel. Some will request what, a bib. It's kind of, is that called a bib?
Yeah.
That's called a bib. Okay, you know, a baby bib. No, that's what.
It's
that's
not
what.
baby.
No, it's not a baby. It's
in
a,
the ancient time, a little child. That's what they wear.
yeah, just a bib, right? Yes, and then some were like, you know, robes, etc. So you can tell by that. Sometimes get an idea, especially when you experience this long enough, you have an idea of who the Buddha or saint is. Okay. So anyway, so our brother, the chief examiner of 3 realms, basically makes his proprieties, and then invisibly, of course, and then he begins his, if you will, his composition, which is the sand writing. Okay, here it starts. Okay, the great Tao is the raft that rescues humanity, so as the original people can return home. Okay, the use of the term original people has to do with the fact that the Buddhist reference of all of us, because we have this Buddha nature, we all come from the source. Okay, and that source is the original source. It's referred to as the original source. So having come from that, that's why he calls the term original people is referenced sometimes. So in Chinese, they call it 原人, 原人. Okay, literally translates to original person or people. Okay, so the Tao is the that which can rescue us. Okay, by what do we understand what it means by rescuing us? Okay, well, yeah, well, say it. What is it? What is it?
It means that it can help us to transcend from this world of suffering.
Yeah, essentially, is to basically what we call in Chinese 超生了死 means to transcend life and death.
Daddy.
Okay, so it's transcend life and death because of the fact that if we do not have this Tao, if we do not have the enlightened portal opened, if you will, we will still go through the cycle of reincarnation. Okay, that's correct. And then the returning home is basically to return to our original source. It's really what that really means. Okay, so okay, and then it goes, and the reason why it is like a raft, it's used as a raft, is because the fact that in Buddhism you'll see a lot of references about the fact that even in Tao here, that we reference the human existence, if you will, as floating on what we call the bitter sea. Bitter sea, we call Ku Hai, which is the bitter sea. Bitter mean implying the fact that there is a great deal of suffering. Okay, as the Buddha himself had mentioned. So that's why it's called the bitter sea, and hence a raft is to pull us out of the ocean. We're sort of like, we're not drowning, but we're just floating along, bobbing up and down. And the raft is to be able to pull us off, and then to be able to, then the raft makes its way to what we call the opposite shore. Okay, and the opposite shore is a reference again in Buddhism talking about the place what we call the home, if you will. Okay, so that is why the use of the raft. Okay, and then here it goes, second line, much gratitude to the benevolence of the Buddha and saints working industriously to the ends of earth for humanity. Here it's just talking about the fact that Buddhists and saints, because after all, we have to ask ourselves, where do Buddhists and saints come from? Where do they come from? Any idea?
Heaven.
Well, that's our Buddha nature, yes, aspect of, because what is the term Buddha and saint? It's a reference, right? By us humans, we call a person a Buddha or a saint because we realize the fact that that person has achieved a certain level of what? Enlightenment, etc. So in other words, we see a Buddha and saint as someone who is above us, if you will. Okay, above us in terms of enlightenment. Okay, if you will. Okay, so therefore, but Buddhas and saints are nothing but references of what? People who have reached that condition, but yet before that they were what? Humans. They're us. So that's why, from a standpoint of a Buddha talking to a Buddha, there's no like Buddha to Buddha. I mean, there's the one does not call each other Mr. Buddha or Mrs. Buddha or whatever. Okay, all right, or Miss Buddha. But the idea is the fact that it is our way of designating people who are enlightened. That's why we call them Buddha and saints. Okay, so because Buddhas and saints were us before, so once they have achieved that level, what's the first thing that Buddhas and saints would do, if you think about it? Because the idea of what's called true merit and all that has to do with the fact that because they've reached the enlightenment, then what they want to do is to be able to what? Have everyone achieve the same enlightenment. Okay. And they do that is because they're able to come to the realization that what? All Buddha natures are the same. Human have forms, different forms, but the Buddha nature remains the same. So therefore, for them, they see the true equality, if you will, the true equality, the universal equality of all of us. And so therefore, realizing that they have, or they can, or have achieved that certain level of enlightenment, they naturally would want everybody else to be in the same level. That's why they are working so hard towards the end for us humans, if you will, or not yet enlightened beings, to be able to achieve the same state that they have. Okay, so in the lecture of human nature class, in the human nature class lectures by Lecture Liu, he talks about the concept of the gongde, the de of the gongde. He explains that de, the aspect of virtue. The de, the literal translation is virtue. Okay. The virtue aspect is the true virtue aspect is to come to the realization that we are all the same thing. That if you hurt, I hurt, if you will. Let's put it that way. Okay. If you're happy, I'm happy. That kind of true equality. Okay. So that's why the saints and Buddhas are doing so much. The true principle is precious and priceless. Depending upon its efforts, dependent upon this, the efforts toward paradise can be reached. Okay, because one of the creed, is it the creed or the mission? I can't remember which one now. Of the Tao is what? At the end, there's a what? 世界大同, right? Is that the creed? Okay, 旅云大同篇. Is that the creed or the mission? I can't remember which one it is. But anyway, we have two mission statements for the sake of, like, companies have mission statements, right? They say, oh, this is our purpose, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, the Tao has that too. Okay. And I think they're in the temple, they're on both sides, right? Yeah, right. Okay. One is great, and one is basically, is following the Confucian philosophy. Okay, 吕云大同篇, right? The Confucian philosophy. And he talks about the fact that if you can conduct yourself a certain way, do certain things, etc., the whole world, not just society, the individual up to the whole world can reach what? World peace and harmony, right? Okay, so in other words, that is the paradise that he's talking about here. Because in order to truly achieve that, you need to what? It is dependent on that understanding and realizing the that true principle. So that if you can work or conduct yourself in accord with these true principles, then the efforts that we're making towards this world harmony, peace and harmony can be reached. That is what he's talking about here. Okay? Okay. Now he goes to a different topic. Oh, by the way, any questions? No? Okay. Because you're also confused, I know. Okay. All right. Okay, but anyway. So he now begins to change his topic. But it is still part of his theme. Okay. It is most terrifying to not understand the principle of life and death. If understood completely, there will be no struggles in one's innermost heart and mind. Okay. Now, let's face it. Us in this human world, we, especially when we're young, very young, we don't think too much about the end. Okay? Now, myself here, okay, you know, I'm near the end. I'm at the dusk, if you will, of this journey on life. So therefore, it becomes more of a, it becomes more of just a passing thought now and then. Okay, all right, okay. So therefore, but I guess because when we're young, okay, it is. Let's face it, in this human world, we do plan for our future, right? We do. It's very normal for us to do that. Even when we're elderly, we think about what we want to do next year, or what are the things that haven't seen or haven't done. I need to do or whatever. Like the bucket list. The movie Bucket List. Okay. Where they have a list of things that you want to do, and it's called a bucket because it's a bucket, I think. Is that it? Okay, that was okay, right? Okay, I didn't see the movie, by the way. I just read the reviews. Okay, so anyway, but the idea is that we somehow are because I don't want to say we're short-sighted, but because we only see the physical aspects of things, life itself. Okay, the physical aspects of life. So that's why we do only think that of things that we want to do prior to the time it is for us to go. Okay, but that is, in a way, very short-sighted because of the fact that from the Buddhist standpoint, it's much longer than that. It's infinite, if you will. Okay, it's timeless. Okay, so life and death, if you will, is just part of that event that happens in what we call time. It's an event that happens in time. That's all, from the Buddhist standpoint. So therefore, if you can truly understand that, what he's talking about the principle of life and death is understanding also what? Karma. The understanding of karma. Okay, not just reincarnation, but understanding of karma, cause and effect. So therefore, if you truly understand cause and effect, then you will be very careful in how you conduct your present life. If you truly understand karma, you will be very careful in how you conduct your present life. Think about that carefully, because it actually is 100% true. Okay, and you have to think about it not only in terms of just this life, but also future lives, if you will. Okay, if you will. Okay, so, but why is it that he talks about if you understand completely, there will be no struggle? Yeah, because if you truly understand karma, you will understand consequences and cause and effects, and so therefore you will be very careful about what you do, right? What you say, what you think. Let's face it. Today we do things or even say things sometimes at the spur of the moment, and we don't take into consideration its consequences. So remember, the movie The Matrix, the Frenchman, or maybe not all of you have seen it, but he talks about there's always consequences of every action. Okay, so same idea. Okay, the journey of Dao cultivation is taken one step at a time. Now, this just means, well, it actually applies to anything. Okay, anything you want to learn or any journey you want to take, you do take it one step at a time. Okay. Yeah, you can jump, we can skip, doesn't matter. But the point is that it's taken one step at a time just to mean the fact that every form of learning or understanding requires what? Effort, patience, and time. Okay, all right? So therefore, one step at a time is just a way of saying the fact that, yeah, you do it at the pace that you can handle, but more importantly, why is one step at a time is the fact that you don't stop. Because once you stop, then guess what? In a way, you have what? Regressed or gone backwards. Gone backwards. Why? Even though you're standing still, you say, hey, I'm not going backwards. No. But you're going backwards relative to people who are still continuing on the journey. Because eventually they will get ahead of you over time. Okay. So the idea is the fact that in any form of cultivation or any form of learning, even in school, we do it one step at a time. Because it is not necessarily, we don't necessarily have the wisdom to be able to grasp everything very quickly. Okay. And then let the roots of Tao grow and bind deeper into one's heart and mind. Again, as you cultivate, the more you cultivate, the principles of the Tao that you are learning or understanding becomes to what? Become more meaningful. Okay? And in that sense, it is like the roots of a tree growing deeper and deeper into the soil, so that what? A strong root system in a tree will prevent the tree from falling down. And also it's what? A good root system in a tree, what? Helps to nourish the tree. Right? The more extensive or more elaborate the root system is of a tree, the stronger the tree becomes. So in that sense, it's the same way with us. The more we can learn about the Tao and understand the Tao, okay, and the more it filters down into our daily life. Okay, again, like the tree roots growing. It filters down to our daily life. The more you can apply it in your daily life, okay, then that's what he's talking about here. Because if you begin to understand more and more, you'll begin to see how it begins to affect you more and more. Okay? Any questions so far? Okay. It takes diligent effort to take in or accept the principles of the Tao. One's nature can be pure and without flaws with constant self-reflection. Okay. Now, why does it take diligent effort to take in or accept this principle of the Tao? Because of the fact that, honestly, we're not used to it. We don't know about it necessarily. Okay. Knowledge-wise. It's possible within our wisdom, we may be able to what? Grasp it very easily. Okay. Again, each one of us right now are at, I guess you could say, different stages of life in a infinite timeline. Okay, infinite line of time. Okay. Because remember how Buddhism says the fact that all of us can become Buddhas in an instant, or what? In 1,000 lifetimes. Okay, so from their perspective, time is timeless. So therefore, now, why certain people attain enlightenment or whatever at different points in their lives even, okay, it's because of the prior lifetimes they had spent cultivating. Okay, so again, I'm sidetracking here. Okay, so again, it comes. Let me get back to here. It takes diligence. Okay, so therefore, because for us it is sometimes new, okay, and sometimes it is already old news, if you will, because of our wisdom already has that period time of cultivations in our previous lives, and some it may be the first time we start cultivating. For some, it may be already cultivating many times. I don't know if you in the Buddha Nature class, Lecturer Liu talks about a story, right? He says a old abbot or old senior disciple, senior monk, if you will, was telling his young
Little monk.
I guess you call it little monk. He says, okay, yeah, I have this book, of the Diamond Sutra, I think it's called, right? Okay, on this book, don't open it, don't touch it. And then of course, once you say that, the young monk's gonna say, why? Right? So when the elder monk leaves, the young monk opens it up, and when he opens it up, what happens? Out pops a genie, right? We call it a genie. Okay, a genie. Okay, it's actually an
angel.
An angel or something like that, right? And then the angel says, "Oh, what can I do for you?" And the little monk goes, "Wow, this is interesting." First time he's scared, he closes the book and then whatever. But eventually, he says, "Oh, okay. Hey, I got this genie that I can make use of." So he started telling him to, because the genie's got superpowers and all that stuff. So he eventually uses it. And when the old monk later, to make a long story short, the old monk later comes back and finds out about it later on. The old monk said to the genie, goes, "Why is it that when the young monk, opens the book, you appear, and when I open the book, nothing happens?" And what did the genie respond? The old monk had said, I opened you so many times, or I read this so many times, blah blah blah. Okay, and then what did the genie respond? He goes, oh, you've only read it for so X amount of time in this lifetime, but your little monk has what? Already studied it, or recited it, or whatever. Anyway, how many lifetimes? Okay, so again, depending upon our timeline or time frame we're looking at, okay, each of us has different levels of cultivation, and that in turn affects our wisdom. So sometimes, some of us are able to grasp the principles of the Tao very readily, others are not. Okay, so that's why it takes effort. Okay, and our human here, when he says our nature, okay, well, I like to use here as what I call human nature. Okay, because, well, it's a combination of our Buddha nature and human nature, okay, here. Because again, it can be pure without flaws if we can constantly self-reflect. Okay, one of the most important things about cultivation is self-reflection. That is the most important, if you will. If you want to really know how to cultivate, you need to know self-reflection. You need to understand self-reflection. Because if you can truly self-reflect constantly, you truly have reached a level very close to a Buddha and saint, if you will, or enlightenment state. Because when you're constantly self-reflecting, what are you reflecting about? Your interactions with others, as well as your own inner thoughts and feelings or whatever. Okay, and by constantly self-reflecting, you're always questioning how you conduct yourself in relations to others, and also how you conduct your own self when alone, if you will. Okay, one of the sayings that's very important by the Buddha and saints is that it's easy to manifest good behavior when you're with others. It is even harder to manifest good behavior when you're by yourself. Why? Because when we're by ourselves, we think, nobody's watching. There's nobody to judge me, and you don't judge yourself, or you judge yourself very leniently. So therefore, what? You may do things that you may consider not great conduct, if you will. Let's put it that way. But when you're in front of others, then you have the realization, there's a sense of judgment by others, sense of whether it's shame or whatever. So therefore, you begin to be more careful. Okay, but again, if you can truly conduct yourself, quote unquote, properly, if you will, when alone, then it doesn't matter whether you're alone or with society. Okay, and that form of self-reflection or conduct, if you will, is truly the more higher level, if you will, than just with others. Okay, so follow the long-range balanced future prospects, and so the hidden can be aroused. This has to do with the fact that as you cultivate from the first line, the previous line, as you cultivate through self-reflection, okay, as you begin to change or transform yourself, okay, then you will begin to find that, I guess you have hidden abilities, I guess, and then the fact that in the long term, if you will, you will then what? Have a much brighter future. Okay, so here, I guess boundless meaning the fact that because as you become more cultivated, if you will, as you become more at the moment, if you will, okay, as you improve, if you will, on your virtue, the defects of your human nature, okay, then what happens? Everybody looks up to you because you've become a model, quote unquote, citizen, if you will. You become a model person which people admire, respect, and wish to follow. Okay, so, but that's long term. It takes time for that to happen. Okay, so henceforth, establish the three eternals or constants, transform this world and attainment for everyone. Okay, what are the three internals and constants? Any ideas? What the Buddha is talking about here? Lecture time? Actually, I thought about it, okay, and I came up with just one thing. In Tao, we always say one thing: 道真, 理真, 天命真. Okay, so in other words, the Tao is real or true. The principles of the Tao is truth and real, and the mandate of Tao is true and real. Okay, now whether that's constant or internal, the Tao, the first two definitely. I don't know about the third one, but there's always the mandate there. There's always the mandate there to what? To give enlightenment to everyone. Okay, so it's always there. So that's why I think it's that. Okay, I may be wrong, but I believe it is that. Okay, and through this, you can transform the world and achieve Tao attainment for everyone. Okay, Tao attainment. That means the fact that, yeah, if everyone receives the Tao, etc., if everyone understands the aspect of cultivation, how to cultivate, understand self-reflection, all that stuff, then yeah, you can transform the world. But it's done individually, one at a time. Okay, it isn't like a whole group all at once necessarily. Okay, so that.
I don't know if it's the same one, but
Yeah.
this is basically to establish virtues, establish
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's another one.
and-
Yeah.
and
Yeah, it's Li. Yeah, right. Yeah. The Chinese is that, right? Yeah, because actually, in my opinion, there are many threes. There's those many three eternals. Okay, and so therefore, I guess he's talking about all of them, maybe. Okay. So anyway, that's why he doesn't list them out. Okay. So anyway, so having said all this, he asked the question: can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do what he's talking about? All these things up here. Okay. So then he continues. Okay. Having karmic affinity, we assemble in this room. Actually, it is due to lifetimes of predestined relationship. Okay, here then again, he's talking about what I mentioned earlier about the fact that in previous lives, we already have cultivated. That's the reason why we're still cultivating today, maybe. Okay, and the only good, I guess you could say, good news about it is that in this lifetime, hey, you can actually attain the Tao. Okay, in this lifetime. Okay, not having to wait for future lifetimes. Okay, so we are here because we're all somehow karmically related, for lack of a better word. Okay, for lack of a better phrase, if you will. We're all karmically related. And this affects family members, parents, friends, etc. All of it, everything. Okay. Have you ever wondered why, sometimes when you have a sibling, you always wonder why you have this particular sibling? Especially since, sometimes when you don't get along, or sometimes, right? So, but there's a reason why. Okay. And then continuing on, to encounter the golden thread at this opportune time, it would probably be better with this. The salvation of three realms is in front of the eyes or is at hand. Okay. So we happen to be living in our present life happen to coincide, if you will, with what they call the salvation of three realms. Okay. And also to encounter this golden thread. Do we know what the golden thread is? It's literally the 道真, 理真, 天命真, that aspect. Okay, I mentioned earlier about the three internals. The 天命真, the mandate. The aspect of the mandate is real. Okay, that is the golden thread. Okay. The salvation of three realms, of course, what are three realms? The earthly realm, us. The two aspects of spiritual realm. Okay, I guess one is the positive aspect, the other one's the negative aspect of the spiritual realm. Okay, so because in the Tao, of course, us humans are able to receive the Tao, but also we have the ability to uplift spirits, if you will. So that is the spiritual realm, the two spiritual realms. Okay, and then our true nature is revealed when pointed out by the enlightened teacher. However, one must diligently consider or examine and investigate. Okay, so remember when we all receive the Tao, of course we have the first treasure. Okay, and that is what is being pointed out by the enlightened teacher. Okay, and it's revealed because even though we don't realize it's revealed. Okay, our Buddha nature is revealed. But at that moment we may know what's going on, not know what's going on. But because we don't know what's going on, we must what? Diligently examine and investigate what this means. Because the Buddha, I believe the Buddha, the Holy Teacher himself may have said this. I don't know. If you can truly understand the meaning of that first treasure, that portal, if you truly understand that, then you truly are enlightened. Okay, so that's something we just say, oh, it's just that, it's just the portal, it's just there, blah blah. No, it's more than that. It's more than that. Okay, that's why it's called the Xuan, or marvelous and mysterious portal. Okay, the Tao of Heaven is established through the Tao of humanity by performing wholeheartedly the 3 principles and 5 virtues. Because the Tao is what? Performed by who? Us, humans. Especially when we're talking about human world, right? So therefore what? In the Tao, there's, actually this is Confucian philosophy. There's something called the Tao of humanity. That is the way of humanity. Okay, the way of humanity, he talks about what? How to be a righteous person, how to conduct yourself, blah, 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 etc. Okay, and that's covered by what is called the 3 principles and 5 virtues. Okay, what are the 3 principles and 5 virtues? Anybody want to, you guess? Of course, lecturers know, but anybody else? Okay, it's what? The principles of what? A ruler and a subject. Okay, that means, I guess you could say senior, junior, or person, superior, inferior, whatever you want, however you want to phrase it. Okay, the second principle is what? Between parents, husband and wife. Well, that's one of them. And then the third one is parents and children. Okay, so if you think about it, those 3 principles, it covers everything in our human life. Covers everything. Think about it. You have parents. You definitely come from parents. So that way, right? And because they're parents, there's a husband and wife. You know, that's how it starts, definitely. Okay. And then what? You have what? Someone who's older, who's younger? Siblings, in terms of siblings. You have a boss and you're an employee. Okay. Your friends who's an elder and you're younger. So those 3 principles cover everything in life. So if you can keep those 3 in mind, then you practice the 5 virtues within that. What are the 5 virtues? Benevolence, right? Righteousness. What else? Propriety.
Trust, wisdom.
Okay.
Faith.
Okay, yeah, okay. Faith. Okay, wisdom.
Wisdom.
仁义礼智信. Okay. 仁 is benevolence. 义 is righteousness, or just sense of justice, a sense of what is right and wrong. Okay. 礼, propriety, how to conduct oneself given different situations. Okay. 智, the concept of using your own wisdom, to have wisdom when you do conduct yourself. Okay. And sincerity or faith. Okay. Again, when you conduct yourself. Okay. So all these things are combined together. You cannot just take one and say, okay, I will just do this and apply it to a certain situation. All 5 is applied or needs to be applied when you're in any situation. All 5 needs to be applied. You can be very compassionate to a person who's homeless, etc. That's true. Okay. Then that means, does compassion then mean that, oh, I need to take him home, feed him, care for him, etc.? Not necessarily. Because this is where your wisdom comes into play, if you will. Okay. So that's why we also say what? Do whatever you can, up to your means by which you can do it. Okay. So there are, if you will, certain constraints that each of those 5 virtues apply, or I guess you could say manifest when you are using all 5 at once. One aspect may constrain the other. Wisdom may constrain limitless compassion, for example. Okay? Like in the example I just gave. So therefore, each of them are, if you will, must work together in harmony. Okay, and that will essentially produce a more satisfactory result than just applying one to the extreme. Okay, so that's why 3 principles which applies to everyone and the 5 virtues are very important in Tao as well as in Confucian philosophy. In fact, it is the hallmark of Confucian philosophy. Okay, so and that is how one becomes what they call it a sage. Us, we call it an enlightened person. Okay, all right. Continuing on, vast righteous spirit will never decrease. Set aside that which is strange, powerful, ability, chaotic, and supernatural. Okay, here he talks about he's sort of like, I guess, putting out another subject here. Vast righteousness spirit will never decrease. That comes about. What is vast righteous spirit? It's actually a translation of what they call in a Chinese idiom, which called hao ran zhen qi. Okay, that's an idiom. Okay, in a Chinese idiom which talks about the fact that you have very strong moral courage, if you will, and righteous courage or whatever, so that it's like it's not like saying you're charismatic or something, but rather very firm in your foundation, on your stand about what is right and wrong and what is good or bad, moral or immoral, etc. Okay, and it says it will never decrease, because if you can maintain this cultivation of self-reflection and also understand or apply the 3 principles and 5 virtues in your life, then you will become a very model citizen, for lack of a better way of describing it. Okay, and then when you have this, though, you'll also not have to worry about what is strange, powerful ability, and chaotic and supernatural people or events. Okay, because one of the things that we sometimes get awe, or I would say not all, but sometimes let's say I will use the word awe. Understand? Everybody know what awe means? That means to be it's actually, I translate it as like a form of fearful respect. Okay, in the sense that you respect that person because of that person's certain abilities, etc. Okay, so that's what it's called by strength. Because powerful ability, like supernatural power, I can do telekinetic or whatever. That which is like chaotic, which can be like that which is very I don't have an example for that. And supernatural, things that's out of the ordinary. All these things, we don't need to worry about that, because what does the Buddhist tell us? That Tao is what? Is very ordinary, because it's just your daily life. Okay, so anyway, okay, so I hear that they're done, so I'm close to finishing. Okay, so
Also not to pursue these things.
oh yeah, not set aside. Yeah, set aside. In other words, you don't need to pursue those things. Just cultivate your Tao, self-reflecting out. Don't worry about learning qigong or special superpowers or whatever. No need for that. There's no need for that. Okay, okay. Now, why? Because there's no need. Because let's face it, when you're in a Dharma class, it is a union of heaven and man. Because actually, heaven and humankind. Okay, because after all, you have the Buddhas come, you have people us together. So that's why it's called a union. Okay, and so therefore that's when we communicate, etc., and get to know each other, so to speak. Okay, purify oneself and be dignified. Okay, it just means that your conduct in a Dharma class must be what? Proper. That's all, or try to be as proper. Let's face it. When you try to think about what you were doing during your 2-day Dharma classes. Were you sleeping? Were you dozing off? Right, Serena? No, just kidding. But anyway, the idea is the fact that, and also the way we conduct ourselves. Okay, so because in a Dharma class, why? When you are in a Dharma class, the Buddhas are actually here. Okay, so they're seeing everything, and that, in fact, he himself is here. The 3 examiners, the chief examiner. Okay, bring together one's body and mind, and not have any improper thoughts. Bear in mind to conduct and act with extreme caution. Okay, again, just a repeat of what I said earlier. The fact that you're in a Dharma class, so you should be more careful about your conduct, about your thoughts, and your actions. Okay, it is not a deception that our ancestors will benefit from conducting oneself with dignity and self-respect. Okay, one of the things we talk about in the Dharma class is that when you are able to attend a Dharma class, what happens? Your ancestors get to what? Attend as well. So that is why they have the ability to also, at this time, during the Dharma class, to learn what you're learning. Okay, to try to understand more about the Tao. And that is why it is a benefit for them. Because the more they can learn and understand, the less they will be affected by whatever condition they're in. Okay, whatever condition they're in, whether it's suffering or whatever or not. Okay, and so therefore, if you can conduct yourself with dignity and self-respect, okay, and properly, then not only do you benefit yourself, but you also benefit your ancestors. Okay. Do not get tired of learning from the lectures. Concentrate and be attentive. Wholeheartedly cherish these 2 days. So he's encouraging us to not waste our time, the 2 days here, to make the most of what we have, the time that we have. Okay, especially those 2 days. Okay, develop proper awareness and views. This is the starting point of change wonder. Because if you can start cultivating from this moment on, you will change your destiny, your future outcome, whatever it may be. Because the more you can cultivate, the more it influences heaven, the Buddhas and saints, and the more the Buddhas and saints will what? Be able to help you. And so that's why your destiny can change. Okay. So, and that is very important. Okay. So he asks, do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. And then he finishes by saying, I, elder brother, act upon orders to distinguish merit and demerit, observing and treating equally without discrimination. His job as chief examiner is to what? Record our conduct, each individual in this Dharma class, to see whether, you get a check mark or you get an X mark. Okay? So that's what we call the merit and demerit. Okay? And then based on our own conduct and what we think. Okay? The red ink dip, pen in hand, recording the conduct of the class. Heaven and humanity will rejoice the great result present. So he's hoping, because this just started the class, that even though I have my red ink dip pen recording our conduct, he's hoping that all of us will conduct ourselves very well. So that when he reports back to God, he says, oh yeah, our report cards are very good. So that's why he says heaven and humanity will rejoice with the good results. So now, of course, he's encouraging us to do that. Whether we can actually do that or not, we'll see at the end of the second day. So, but the point is that that's what he's hoping for. So again, he then stops. So the chief examiner, basically, he talks about essentially our need to be self-aware of ourselves, our conduct, our speech, etc. And also what? Our willingness or our willingness to make the effort to learn what we can in these the Dharma class days. Okay. And that is all what? The starting point in which that we can what? To cultivate. And through cultivation, we then change our destiny. Okay? So anyway, if I have said anything incorrect, I hope the Buddhas and saints, especially Santian Zukao, Yuan will forgive me for maybe not translating his scripture correctly. And I thank the predecessors and transmitters that I have this opportunity to present this class. And I thank all of you for listening. And I hope that we can all learn something from this sutra translation. Thank you very much.